Mr. President, 21 years ago this week, family of 168 people, 19 of those 168 people children, received some of the worst news of their lives. And that news was that a beloved member of each of their families had been killed in the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City. We all watched the news that day, that night, the next day, that week, and beyond, as we took in the devastation caused by that blast. That horrible crime was carried out by radical anti-government extremists. It remains the deadliest act of homegrown terrorism in our nation's history. With the families who lost a loved one that day in 1995, there's no way to fill the void left by a life taken too soon. But I know that our government's pursuit of justice for the lives lost that day served as a small source of comfort for the people who were left in mourning. At the time of that heinous crime, Judge Merrick Garland, President Obama's nominee, to fill the vacancy on the Supreme Court, was the principal associate deputy attorney general at the U.S. Department of Justice. He immediately flew to Oklahoma City to lead the criminal investigation and supervise the prosecution of the bombers. In fact, he insisted on being sent. He didn't just volunteer. He didn't just say, well, okay, I will go. He told his supervisors that they had to let him go. He was the highest-ranking Justice Department official on the ground in Oklahoma City following the bombing. And he helped to oversee every aspect of the investigation and the subsequent trial. His colleagues at the time have attested to Judge Garland's commitment to following the letter of the law in every aspect of that investigation. He refused to take any shortcuts that could somehow compromise the integrity of the case that he and his team were building. Through their tireless efforts and his tireless leadership, his deep understanding of the law and scrupulous attention to detail, Judge Garland ensured the prosecution had an airtight case. Ultimately, both bombers were convicted, giving the families of the 168 victims not their sons, their daughters, their children, their moms, their dads back again, but at least provide a small measure of vindication for the losses that they had incurred. Judge Garland's work was so appreciated by the families and friends of those victims 21 years ago that last year, on the 20th anniversary of the bombings, the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum awarded Judge Garland its annual Reflections of Hope distinction. Not the year after the bombing, 20 years after that bombing. Judge Garland has established an unparalleled reputation as a brilliant, dedicated prosecutor and jurist. He has received strong bipartisan support in the legal community, including that from Alberto Gonzales, the former U.S. Attorney General and White House counsel in the administration of President George W. Bush. So today, it's not just discouraging, at least to me, that most of my, not all, but most of my Republican colleagues are refusing to consider Judge Garland's nomination to serve on our highest court. Personally, I believe it's outrageous. I served for 8 years as governor of Delaware, a state who's renowned for its own courts: Supreme Court, Court of Chancery, Superior Court, courts which have and play a national role, not just on a state level. For 8 years, I nominated men and women to serve on those courts. I can only serve 8 years as governor of my state. Every one of those nominations, hearings were held for them, whether they're Democrat or Republican. And I think during that period of time, I nominated an equal number of Democrats and Republicans to the judiciary. And that's the Constitution of our country, our state rather. And I think it's, frankly, a great example because we have one of the most highly regarded judiciaries in Delaware. But you know, my obligation, my job as governor was to nominate outstanding candidates for these judgeships that were, as they became vacant. The role of the state senate in Delaware was to consider them. They never waited a year and left a seat vacant for a year, awaiting the end of my time as governor or any other governor's time. That would never happen. We wouldn't wait 10 months. The state senate in our state wouldn't wait 10 weeks. They did their job. They did their job. So we're not doing ours, and we need to. And I feel the fact that we haven't is outrageous. When we elect presidents of this country, we elect them for 4 years. And if they're reelected, then for another 4 years. They're not president for, 3 years, 11 months. They're not president, we're elected to a term of 3 years and 10 months. We elect them for a term of 4 years. They need to be on the job for 4 years. And this president, our president, is doing what he's supposed to do. And that is to send us the names of exceptional people to serve in incredibly important positions like the Supreme Court. He's done his job. And I very much want to do mine. And I want to be joined by Democrats and Republicans in doing our job. Every member of this body has taken at least one oath to uphold the Constitution, and some of us many times over. When I was 17 years old, not much older than the young interns that are sitting here at the front of the chamber, I took my first oath as a midshipman, freshman, Ohio State Navy ROTC, where I was privileged to go on a scholarship, a Navy scholarship. I, 4 years later, took another oath, raised my right hand as an ensign in the Navy, and took an oath to defend the country and Constitution, headed for Pensacola, Florida, to become a naval flight officer, right in the middle of the Vietnam War. Ended up serving 3 tours over there during that conflict. As a congressman, I took an oath to defend the country and Constitution. As governor, I also took a similar oath to defend our country and Constitution, at least to defend our state constitution. And then here as a U.S. Senator, I've taken it any number of times. The refusal of the majority here, and I think I'm regarded by my colleagues as one of the less partisan people we've got here. But I think the refusal of the majority to even consider this nomination is more than an abdication of our responsibility. I believe it's an example of playing politics with the very Constitution we have sworn to uphold. For those who don't know, Delaware is known as the first state. We are known as the first state because on December 7th, 1787, before anybody else, any other state had ratified the Constitution, we did. And I joke with people that for one whole week, Delaware was the entire United States of America. We opened things up. We let in Maryland, we let in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and eventually Louisiana, others, even Iowa. And I think for the most part, it's turned out pretty well. But the idea of playing politics with the Constitution that we have sworn to uphold is deeply troubling to me. I hope that's not what's going on here, but I fear that it is. The right and the just way to proceed is to begin consideration of Judge Garland's nomination, not next month or not some other year, but now, first in committee and then on the Senate floor. We have something we call the Delaware Way, and where we focus on the 3 C's: communicate, compromise, and collaborate. And that's a good example for 49 other states, and I think it's a good example right here. After all, we have been sent by the people to this hallowed place, this Senate chamber, to put democracy into action, to protect liberty, and to protect justice for all. Nearly 50 years ago, a former Chief Justice, Warren Burger, I believe he was from California, I think he was appointed or nominated by, well, he was nominated by Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican. But former Chief Justice Warren Burger said, I quote him here, "A sense of confidence in the courts is essential to maintain the fabric of ordered liberty for a free people. And he went on to say in that, inefficiency and delay will drain even a just judgment of its value. I think the shorthand version of that is justice delayed is justice denied. Justice delayed is justice denied. And by dragging our feet, trying to get into a new Congress, maybe with a new president, certainly with the new president, that's delaying justice, I believe. In the face of the prospect of any number of potentially 4-4 divided verdicts in the Supreme Court with only 8 members, we cannot just stand aside and let that happen. Justice Berger was right when he said those words all those years ago, and he is right today. Mr. President, I think it's time to stop this delay. It's time for us to serve the people. It's time for us to deliver justice. It's time for us to give this president's nominee the consideration demanded of us by the Constitution, which we are sworn to uphold. Mr. President, I see no colleague seeking recognition. And with that, I would note the absence of a quorum. Thank you.